Well, Hunter Biden is back in the news, but not really if you're paying attention to the legacy media. You probably missed this story. Here's the Washington Examiner headline.
I love how a lot of folks in independent media like to mock mainstream media, as they should, and sort of present themselves as something better. And some are, and in some ways they are, while at the same time doing the very same things that mainstream media does because they basically have the same business model, right? It's about anything for views, right? How do you make money in the news media? How is The Hill making money? How is CNN making money, right? Fundamentally, it's from views, traffic generation, right? If it bleeds, it leads, right? The Hill is not going to be able to pay their staff if the stories that they're putting out and the way that they're putting them out is not engaging enough to bring enough viewers so that they can make profit from the advertising, right? That's the same predicament that CNN and MSNBC are in, right? So independent media, and I know people will look at The Hill, not as good a representation of independent media, but the YouTubers is the same thing, right? If they aren't delivering the content that the algorithm likes, right, in the way that the algorithm likes, right, which means essentially a lot of them are controlled by software, right, then they're not going to get enough traffic to get enough revenue from the ads, right? This ridiculous idea that there's such a huge difference between independent media and corporate media in this corporate states of America is absolutely ludicrous. The main difference between independent media and corporate media is that independent media has the choice to very easily be honest and do the right thing. However, that will mean sacrificing a lot of profits in most cases. So, yes, they have the freedom to do the right thing, but most will choose to, basically pray at the altar of the algorithm so that they can actually keep a roof over their heads and actually pay their bills. That's how they pay their bills, right? By getting the views and traffic, right? If you're not being sensational, if you're not pandering to the ideology of your audience, and you don't have to be super talented in terms of entertaining, which is a very, very small amount of people that have that ability to just really, really entertain people so that it doesn't matter whether you are objective or partisan. People just want to hear you speak about whatever it is you're talking about. That's a very, very small group. So for most people, it's going to be like in the movie business, it's sex and explosions, right? In the political world, it's pandering to the partisanship of your audience, right? You're going to do all about the left, the left, the left, the left, the right, the right, the right, right? You're going to pick up a echo chamber and focus on it and maximize your profit.
Headline: the moment Hunter Biden tells his father he will do anything he tells him to. So the moment Hunter Biden says his father will do anything he tells him to.
So beginning of the story, listen to what they say. Listen, the moment Hunter Biden says his father will do anything he tells him to. Remember that phrase. Hunter Biden says his father will do anything he tells him to. And the person on the show is repeating that same line.
You can hear that actually on tape. I think we have a clip of that we can play right now.
I'm pretty sure this is not on tape. It's 2022. I don't know why people keep talking about tape. I grew up in the era of tape, so I'm not a young guy anymore, and I stopped talking about tape a long time ago. I actually have some tapes. I have a lot of tapes, mini DV. I have some DV cam tapes as well. I think I maybe had one Beta SP. I don't know about cassette tapes though. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this wasn't on a tape, especially considering you see what it says, right? Audio file on Hunter Biden's laptop. I really don't think his laptop has a tape drive, but that's just me.
Anything that I want him to, that he believes in, if I say this is important to me, then we'll talk about
it. On tape, I think we have.
So I want you guys to, I had to rewind it because I want you guys to clearly hear what he's saying. Remember what was said before, and I'll listen to what's being said.
Have a clip of that we can play right now.
We'll talk about anything that I want him to, that he believes in. If I say this is important to me, then he will work a way in which to make it a part of his platform. My dad respects me more than he respects anyone in the world, and I know that to be certain. So it is not going to be about whether my dad thinks it's going to affect his politics. No, it won't. It's not going to be whether or not he's going to be embarrassed. I mean, he never will. It's not going to. All of those concerns that you have with all of the people that you know, that are the children of, I have none of them.
Within the first few seconds of that recording, instantly, the minute I heard something that he said, I was like, hold up, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. This is not quite sounding like the way it's been advertised. Now, let me clarify something. I think Hunter Biden probably belongs in prison. Whatever bullshit he was doing, where they were paying him all a ton of money and he didn't really have the qualifications for it. I mean, that alone, like that's some shady bullshit, right? Joe Biden, very corrupt, very dishonest. I'm sure if we dig deep enough, I could probably find some reasons why he should be in prison too. But specifically, his son, for sure, looks like a criminal case waiting to happen. And then, of course, we want to know what Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, what they've been up to, right? What has Hunter Biden potentially been influencing his father to do? Any kind of backdoor dealing, whatever, especially with Hunter Biden and these foreign countries, rubbing shoulders with some very, very corrupt people, and now his father is president of the United States. I would definitely want to dig into that. As much as I appreciate the digging into of January 6th, because I'm not a tribalist, I appreciate truth, right? I'm not rooting for any team, right? The same level of curiosity for the details of January 6th I have for the details of Hunter Biden and any connections to his father, what he may have been up to. The guy is the president of the United States, right? The fact that his son might have been involved in some shady stuff that's involving foreign countries, I would really want to know, right? The same kind of, I think actually the January 6th trial has been going very well, in my view, for the most part. I think that they've been doing a pretty good job. Never mind that I'm sure they're going to exploit it for in terms of the election, but that's a distraction, right? You gotta look at the substance, right? If you don't like what's being said, a nice deflection is to focus on why are they doing it, right? You can play all kinds of games. Valid point to point out that they might be doing this for political purposes, but to focus only on that and to not focus at all on the substance of what's happening is to be very dishonest, right? So again, the curiosity I have for January 6th, I have for Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. January 6th, I had to pause for a second. I was going to say potentially more important than what might be amiss with Biden and his son. But when I think about it, this is the president of the United States. I mean, he's the top of our government. I think there could easily be something there that is a similar level of concern as what happened on January 6th, which is still currently happening right now across this country, right? They haven't stopped. It didn't stop at January 6th. It's happening to this very day and around the country. They are still at it, right? The only thing that's changed is they've gotten smarter and better at what they're doing. But yeah, the president of the United States, he's the current president. I think this could easily be on the same level of importance as the January 6th stuff. In fact, even more important because, again, Biden currently holds power, right? If he's compromised, we need to know about it. But for most people who are aware of those concerns I just mentioned, but have a more tribal approach, so now you're just going to go in team anti-Biden, team anti-left, team anti-Democrat, then you're going to go along with whatever the narrative that your tribe is doing, right? So a video like this calling out Hunter Biden, you're not going to look at it very critically. You're going to be like, yeah, those corrupt guys, blah, blah, blah. And they are corrupt. You already heard my point of view on that. But you're not going to be listening with a critical ear because what's being presented is going along with what you believe to be true or want to be true. Here's a detail that you might have missed in the very beginning of this recording. I'm going to play it one more time, see if you pick up on it, and then I'm going to explain.
You can play right now.
He'll talk about anything that I want him to, that he believes in. If I say this is important to me, then...
So he just said it again. I'm going to play it final time, and then I'll explain to you what detail contradicts this tagline from the Washington Examiner and what's being said on the Hill. That I'm sure if you're more right-leaning and you're more in the anti-Democrat, anti-left tribe, which operates very similarly to the anti-Republican, anti-right-wing tribe, right? It's two sides of the same coin. If you're in one of those tribal bubbles on the right side, here's what you missed.
Play right now.
He'll talk about anything that I want him to.
He'll talk about anything that I want him to. If you're on the anti-Biden tribe, your brain stops at that phrase. You think to yourself, yes, I knew it. This guy is so corrupt. Look at him. He's controlling Biden. And the mainstream media don't want to talk about it, which is true, right? And then you kind of, in one ear, not the other, the very next thing he says.
That he believes in.
That he believes in. That fundamentally changes what is being said and contradicts the way it's being presented in the media here. If you omit the what he believes in, then Joe Biden is simply a puppet being controlled by his son. His son can just say whatever. So let's say his son says, hey, we should be pushing for more rights for trans swimmers, for example. Next thing you know, Joe Biden's talking about trans swimmers need more rights. That's the way it's being framed. That's the way it's being presented. And that will be an accurate framing and presentation if you omit the very next line, which is that he believes in. If Joe Biden doesn't believe in getting more rights for trans swimmers, according to his son, that's not something that he's going to get Joe Biden to talk about. He put a disclaimer of that he believes in. When you consider the full context of what he's saying, it no longer becomes as scandalous as it's being presented, even though there's certainly scandals to be held. But this is just like the media. Again, independent media love to focus on making mainstream media the bad guy. Mainstream media is not the problem. Partisan media is. For-profit media is. Media that's just focused primarily on driving traffic and not on honesty and accuracy and objectivity. That's the problem. So whether you're corporate or independent is irrelevant. What matters is your business ethics, right? And business ethics in independent media and corporate media, really hard to find. So if you consider it in full context, what Joe Biden's son is saying is the things that Joe Biden believes in are things that he can get his father to focus on. Why that no longer becomes scandalous is because we're essentially talking about Joe Biden's positions, his ideology, his beliefs, right? As a president of the United States, that is part of the package when we elect a president, right? We're not just electing someone to wear a suit and to have this title of president, but we're electing you based on your ideology, based on your beliefs, your values, right? And his son is saying, basically, I can pick and choose from the values and beliefs that Biden has and make him focus on them. He can pick and choose to make Biden focus on his particular values that they share. We cannot expect a president to do anything other than be true to the beliefs that they presented themselves as, right? Because when we do all the debates and stuff and we make an assessment, we're making an assessment based on values, right? That's part of it anyway. The thing that will be scandalous is if they didn't have to share the same value, right? If he didn't put the things that he believes in, that means, again, as I illustrated earlier, his son would have ability to literally do what they're claiming he does. Push Biden wherever he wants him to. Whatever I want Biden to talk about, he talks about. That's scandalous. Because we elected Joe Biden, not his son. Right? People that elected Joe Biden based on the perceived beliefs. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, obviously, right? There was a little unique scenario going on with Trump and all this kind of stuff. But in general, like, how did he forget about the mainstream media's manipulation there? There's a lot, like I said, it's a little complicated. But part of the process of how Joe Biden got to the path that led him to being president, part of that is a values assessment, right? People may have been misled by the mainstream media to think he's the most electable, right? But if the mainstream media was the only one saying he's electable, but then people felt that Biden had values that were really against their own values, I don't think he would have done as well, right? People voted on top of the other stuff, right? They voted based on this Uncle Joe persona, right? You got this crazy Trump, and then you got Uncle Joe. Everybody knows him, blah, blah, blah. He presents himself as this, guy of integrity. I mean, he's a known liar for decades, but still, he presents himself in this manner that's like familiar, and it has a trusting vibe. This seems like a trustworthy guy. If you consider the track record and the history, definitely not trustworthy, right? But if you just listen to him talking and, listen to restore the soul of America, right? But this is what these guys are, how they're presenting it.
If I say this is important to me, then he will work a way in which to make it a part of his platform. My dad respects me more than he respects anyone in the world, and I know that to be certain. So it is not going to be about whether my dad thinks it's going to affect his politics. No, it won't. It's not going to be whether or not he's going to be embarrassed. I mean, he never will. It's not going to. All of those concerns that you have with all of the people that you know, that are the children of, I have none of them.
Yes, the lack of embarrassment is certainly relevant. Andrew Kerr, the reporter on that byline, he's an investigative reporter at the Washington Examiner, is joining us now to discuss the situation further. Andrew, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So this audio is key. I mean, it's kind of saying the quiet part out loud. It's kind of saying what everybody already knows. You don't go to lobbying, and you're not successful in lobbying unless you have the ear of people in power. And if your last name is Biden, that would mean Joe Biden. But Andrew, what do we know about the timeline of this audio? When is it from? What's the context? Who's he talking to? Tell us more from your reporting.
Yeah, so this is was recorded in early December 2018, so about 5 months before Joe Biden announced his candidacy for president.
Listen to the questions that she asked, which are actually good questions, and see if this guy gives good answers to what she's asking.
In April 2019. This is a 77-minute recording. We pulled it from a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop. It was actually from a password-protected backup of his iPhone XS. We've been working with a former Secret Service agent.
So far, he's talking a lot of extraneous details. He's not really getting into the substance in terms of the context. He's giving the much larger context in terms of the recording itself, right? Where the recording came from and that kind of stuff. But this whole piece is focused on making a claim about a claim that they're claiming Hunter Biden made, right? So if the discussion is about what he said, we would want context about that conversation, not about the tape. It's 70-something minute tape. So I'm sure there's lots of things discussed on there. So we don't want to know, I mean, those are good details to know as well. But the most important context would be, because we're talking about the statements made, would be of that conversation. What was that conversation about? What's the context of that conversation? I mean, we have enough context in the little snippet that they use to see that the way it's being framed is not entirely accurate, it doesn't seem. But there's more context that can be given in terms of what is really, because we don't really know even what are they really talking about. We hear about the statements being made, but why is he saying these things to the person? What's the topic of discussion, right?
Discussed the Mitrillos, and he was able to locate the password to that 28 gig backup.
So he's focused on the recording itself, context of the recording, not the context of the statement or the conversation, the specific part of the conversation. All the stuff he's talking about does not help us at all to understand what we just heard. Is that by design, or is he just not that good at his job?
On the laptop, and so there's just a whole host of new files that we've been going through, including this recording. Hunter is talking with a British artist named Philippa Horan, and this was in the throes of his.
So he's getting closer now. So now he's given the context of the recording. He starts with that. Now after he's given us all those extra details, now for the first time we're getting remotely close to the conversation. We at least know who he's talking to, right? Will he continue to get to the most important detail about what was the topic at that part of the recording? The stuff we heard, what were they discussing in that moment?
Addiction to crack cocaine. So it very well could be that he was exaggerating the influence that he has with his father. We did ask the White House.
So now he spent all this time talking about the tape and drive this and that, all like does nothing to help us understand the context. Then he briefly skated over something that was the closest to the conversation, who he was talking to, and then he runs away very quickly. He mentions who he's talking to, and then instead of talking about what they were talking about in that moment, he jumps away to further expanding on the framing that he's given, right? This is framed as basically Hunter's controlling his dad, right? But rather than giving us the context of what's being said so we can make our own assessment whether we agree or disagree with the framing, he has jumped from the laptop technology, blah, 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 to briefly mentioning who he's talking to, and now he's running to expanding on the framing, right? So he's going to give us more about basically from a standpoint of us assuming that the framing is accurate, right? He at this point wants us to assume that his framing is accurate. So based on that assumption, hey, we asked the White House to explain themselves, and they didn't respond. Now, if you're a partisan, if you're a tribalist, and you're on the anti-Biden side, I mean, I'm on the anti-Biden side too, but you know what I mean, then you don't care about any of this stuff. You agree with the framing because since the framing agrees with your biases, you don't care to be critical about it, right? They're saying something that you like, right? You don't like Biden, and they're saying something about look how dirty Biden is, and you like that. So you don't need to know the details. You don't need to know the context, right? You're gonna accept the framing, right? So you don't care about the laptop drive, whatever. You're like, oh, laptop drive. And then they mention the name of the person he's talking to. Oh, okay, interesting. And now hopping over to something that you guys both agree on, right? Because talking to a tribalist that aligns with this person, you don't need evidence. So what adds more value to the story for that person is hearing about how the White House didn't respond. That sounds like it's further damning. And it is, right? But again, as a journalist, you're supposed to tell the story and inform the audience. And the most important detail here is what was said on the recording. And since it's just a small part of it, it would help to get some context of about what's being discussed. Why is this so-called journalist not giving us that? By design or incompetence?
What Hunter said that he was directly involved in the months leading up to Joe Biden's presidential candidacy. Talking about being involved in political planning discussions, text from this new trove of documents show, but they didn't answer. It's a pretty fascinating recording, just seeing how candid he was with just saying that essentially, if it's an important issue to me, then my dad is going to make it a part of his political platform.
Notice again the reframing, right? He's omitting the context of if they share the value, right? If you listen to what he's saying, that's scandalous, right? Without the detail of the shared interest.
That's how you sell lobbying services, yeah. How you market.
Right.
And her as a journalist, having this guy on her show, she's supposed to represent the right, totally uncritical, not pushing back on what's being said, not thinking critically, right? There's a lot of ways she could have pressed him for more details. Like she, as a journalist, should be pushing him on context of the statement, right? But she probably likes the statement, right? So now this guy on the left, he's supposed to be a little more left-leaning. I'm sure he's going to be more critical thinking, mostly because of his biases being in the right way for this particular situation, right? Because if you're partisan, if you have two partisans, one on the right, one on the left, to get to the bottom of what's being said in the recording, you'd want to listen to someone who has bias on the left, but integrity, right? Because that's the person who's going to be suspicious and critical and more likely to push back, right? Person on the right is going to be less critical, less likely to push back, more likely to just nod their head and like, oh my goodness, blah, 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 right? And that goes in reverse. If there's something scandalous about Trump being discussed, someone who's left-leaning is going to be lower bar. They're going to be more like just nodding their head like, yeah, oh, Trump, he's socialized, right? Someone on the right, in that case, if you have two partisans on both sides, someone on the right is going to be, if they have integrity, that's a key thing. You have to be, if you're on the opposing tribe, right, and you're honest, more likely to get more details from you than from the other side, right? So if these two guys are talking about something scandalous about Trump, and we're to believe that the guy on the left has integrity, he's more likely to get us some more details. The person on the right is more likely to skip over things and just kind of like, oh, liberal media, whatever, right? But in this case, let's see what the left-leaning person says.
The context of that conversation is talking about drug treatment, right?
So notice the very first thing he points out is the context of what's being said. You think that's a coincidence? That he goes straight into what, from the very get-go, that's where my head's at, right? Because this is sort of basic stuff. You're making a statement about what Hunter Biden said. You play a short bit of what he said. The next thing we want to know is more about the context of what we heard, right? What were they discussing in that moment? That's kind of obvious. That's very, very basic. That's not even like an aggressive pushback and like, good job for this guy, kudos. No. Anyone who is remotely curious to understand and know what this is we're listening to, the first thing you're going to want to know is the context of that statement, not of the recording itself, right? Because again, it's a long recording. The context of the statement.
Yeah, we uploaded about 7 minutes of the conversation, but the whole recording is 77 minutes, and he does talk about his ongoing addiction to crack cocaine. He's actually at one point he sort of justifies his continued use of the substance, saying that maybe this is the best thing that ever happened to me, and this can put me down.
So he's kind of dancing around. It's 77 minutes. This section was 7 minutes. Okay, can you summarize what's being discussed in the 7 minutes instead of just jumping around? Because the stuff he's saying is random. He's not giving it directly tying to what we heard, right? How do we know? What he's saying about the drug use could have been in any part of the recording, right? It really sounds like he's just dancing. So that's leading me to believe that this guy is not being very honest with us. He's intentionally trying to mislead for clicks. That's my view anyway.
Down the pathway of turning me into the man that my father believes that I am. I mean, he had a horrible addiction. It's just really clear, looking through the drive. I mean, he was just, he was really in it deep. But yeah, I mean, still.
Notice nothing he's saying gives us any further context to what we heard. Because what we heard, he's talking about if we share something, blah, blah, and I talk about it, he's going to talk about it. Okay, how does that connect to what he's talking about, random stuff about drugs? Now, obviously, it sounds like the recording might be online, so if someone really wants to know, they can go and take a look at the recording. But we know an overwhelming majority of people are not going to listen to the recording if they're right-leaning or the anti-Biden tribe, right? Because again, your bar is super low. It's easy to fool you with stuff that agrees with what you already believe. And this guy knows it. The media in general knows it.
What the tape that you just showed, he did make the claim that, I will do anything that I want to.
I will do everything that I want to. Like, he's not even making any sense. Did you hear what he just said? Definitely is giving a vibe that he's not being honest, because now he's just saying random stuff. His words are jumbled up now. He can't even speak.
Any hints you can give us about what else? Any hints?
Wanted to. I will do anything that I want. Wanted to. I will do anything that I want. Wanted to.
I will do anything that I want to. Who said this now? Who said they'll do anything that they want to? And you can see, like, he's even stumbling. He's not only is he saying stuff that doesn't make any sense, but he stops in the middle. I don't even want to. Like, why is he struggling? Has he not spent some time listening to the recording to understand the full context of what's being discussed? Or did he? But the full context doesn't help the narrative he's trying to profit from.
Any hints you can give us about what else you guys have found so far in here? Because it's a fascinating story about finding the iPhone backup that was had it encrypted, and you needed a password, and then your cyber guy managed to find the password somewhere else in the computer. Tried it, obviously it worked, and it unlocked it. Anything else that you can tease for us?
Yeah, so we did another story this week. There's an incident in.
So interesting. He just pushed back lightly, and now he's moving on to something else. The guy didn't really answer the question very well, and he wasn't really making much sense. But this guy just, light pushback. Now let's jump to something else. So failure on both sides of this discussion. That's my view anyway. What's your thoughts? This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.